And I feel like as appraisers, we sometimes don't really know what our destination is. Maybe we do deep down inside, but to vocalize it or to put it on paper is a completely different thing than to just think that you kind of know inside.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
I come before you, my friends, to ask your forgiveness for the sins that I have committed, for the hypocrite that I've been. You'll understand as I explain here in just a little bit. Welcome to the Appraiser Coach podcast, everyone. I have, as you know, been deep down what I keep calling the AI rabbit hole. Of course, that analogy comes from the Alice in Wonderland series, the Through the Looking Glass story of her heading down, chasing the white rabbit, and arriving in a world that is just absolutely unbelievable. And I feel a lot like Alice. I don't look a lot like Alice, but I feel a lot like Alice. At least I think what she would feel like as I continue to learn more about agentic AI and what it can do and what it can't do and the bugs that it has and the frustration and the screaming and yelling and swearing that I often do at my computer. And then the other moments of mind blown as I see what agentic AI can do for us and the future of what it can do. But I want to take you back to the basics for a little bit and remind myself mostly, but do it public here on the Appraiser Coach podcast, of why I got into this coaching thing to begin with. My story briefly, and you've heard it before, so I'm not going to recount the whole thing, but the first half of my career, and by the way, I just celebrated my 30th year as an appraiser. February 2026 marked 30 years of being an active appraiser. I've never not been an appraiser. There's been times I've slowed way down. There was a time that I was working for another company as their education lead, but I was still actively doing appraisals a couple of times a week during that time. Now, my current load is much, much lower than it has been in the past. There were times that I was doing sometimes a dozen or more appraisals in a week, and I am now down to maybe a couple appraisals a month. Not a week, a month. It's enough just to keep my toe in the water, to keep, if you will, apprised of what it's like to be an active in the trenches appraiser. But I have focused most of my energy lately on coaching and artificial intelligence. And folks, again, the first half of my career, I found myself 60, 70 hours a week and not much to show for it. My story is that when I was working 60 and 70 hours a week, I was bringing home less than $100,000 a year. And when you factor in overhead and taxes, it was far less than $100,000 a year, sometimes closer to $50,000 to $60,000 a year, which meant I was living, even back then, we're talking 20 years ago, I was still living paycheck to paycheck. I was still working evenings and weekends. And then, folks, fast forward to a couple of years later when I figured out how to implement what I called the principles of prosperity into my appraisal business. This is the principles that any successful person utilize in their lives to get their time back and get their money back, to work less and make more money. That's what this podcast is all about. That's what coaching is all about. And for the last 16 plus years, that's what I've been doing as the appraiser coach, is helping others to do what I did. Now, helping them in their own way. It's not a prescript recipe, because otherwise I just write a book and give it to everybody, right? Here's how you make more money. Here's how you'll work less. But the problem is it's not a problem. It's just a fact that we all have our own way of doing things. We all have our own way of pushing the envelope forward. And what is acceptable to me may not be acceptable to you. And furthermore, whatever your goal is may not be the same thing that my goal is. We talk often in my coaching program about vision and about destination and about where you're going. In fact, the last time I was on this microphone, I think last week, we talked about the self-driving Tesla and the fact that if you don't have a destination plugged in to your GPS, it will wander aimlessly. It will actually drive around, right? But it has no destination. It's kind of an interesting thing, right? It's not just going to sit still. If you hit go self-drive, it'll start driving. It'll take you around. But if it has no destination, I mean, who knows where you're going to end up? And I feel like appraisers can be often the same way. When I talk to them about their ultimate goal, the goal is vague. And if you have a vague goal, folks, it probably doesn't. Again, going back to Alice in Wonderland, you remember the Cheshire Cat? And she asked how to get to her destination. And I'm paraphrasing, but the cat said, well, where are you going? And she said, it doesn't really much matter. And her answer, or the cat's answer was, then it doesn't really much matter which path you take. And I feel like as appraisers, we sometimes don't really know what our destination is. Maybe we do deep down inside, but to vocalize it or to put it on paper is a completely different thing than to just think that you kind of know inside. And this brings me back to why I started coaching in the beginning. I started coaching because I love teaching, but I had something to share. See, I had been on the other side for far too many years. We're talking 12 plus years. I spent paycheck to paycheck working 60 to 70 hours a week. And then, if you will, and this is maybe overstating it a bit, but I figured it out. I did some study, I did some research, and mostly I started implementing these principles: the law of delegation, the law of technology, the law of processes, SOPs, the law of finances, and reviewing your numbers. Not knowing your numbers, folks, means you don't know your business. Therefore, you're making decisions blindly. And it took me 3 or 4 years to figure it out. But folks, I went from working about 60 to 70 hours a week and making less than $100,000 a year to very quickly working way less than 40 hours a week and making well over $400,000 and $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year. I was making more money and I was working less time. And that even led to further implementation of SOPs and streamlining and putting into play the things that I was coaching others on. And I eventually went to the point that I was at the tier 5. We talk about that in our coaching program. What is a tier 5 level? That's the ownership / counsel side, right? Once you get to that level, you're basically making about 20% of everything that's being brought in. So the gross money that's being brought in, and I was making a very good living, 20% of $1.9 million at one point, and working less than 5 hours a week. No, I am not exaggerating. That is the absolute truth. Okay, that brings me fast forward to today, 2026. Now, I've always been interested in AI from the very beginning. Now, when I say the beginning, AI actually started in the 1950s. Okay, I wasn't even alive in the 1950s. When I say from the very beginning, I'm talking about the beginning of consumer level AI, ChatGPT. Okay, when ChatGPT first came out, I was on it and using it a week and 2 days later. About 9 days after it came out, I had been introduced to it, I had fallen in love with it, and I started using it. That first year was a lot of experimentation, and then by the second year, it was a start. It was less experimenting and more implementing. And now in 2026, welcome to the world of agentic AI, where AI can do stuff for you, and it can do stuff autonomously and in loops while you're sleeping. Now, folks, this has opened up an entirely new world for me, and I find myself back in very much the same. Well, I'm not going to say the same. I'm not working 60 to 70 hours a week. but I am absolutely working over 40 hours a week. Now, when I use the word working, I want to be clear about what I mean. Okay. When I say working, experimenting, playing, I actually love AI. And I know that sounds like an excuse, right? What's your excuse for working so hard, Dustin? Well, I just love my work, right? That can be a trap. And that's not what I mean by this. What I mean by this is I'm doing less of the things that I really love and more of the things that are fun and exciting, and I see a lot of um, upside to. I see a lot of potential for. But finding the time to do the things I absolutely love is becoming more and more difficult. Now, to be fair, I'm in a different position in my life than I have been. Folks, I'm the father of 4 children, and they range in age from 28 down to 18. And most of my life, most of my adult life has been, I got married very young. I was 21 years old when I got married. And at 21, I was a baby. And within a couple of years, we had our first child. And so, the old saying of, babies raising babies, I think applied to both my wife and I. And we learned and we grew and we did a lot of things wrong. And just ask our kids, we're probably the worst parents ever, but we tried. And one thing that was a big push for me in coaching was to help people to have more time with their spouse, with their partner, and with their loved ones, including their children, with their family, extended family, friends, relationships, right? And I am constantly asking my coaching clients, why do you do the things that you do? Why is it that you are working so hard? What's the purpose? Why did you become an appraiser to begin with? In fact, that was the biggest focus of the Elevate retreat in 2025. One word, why? We spent 3 days deep diving into our souls, sometimes literally to tears, like literally bringing people to tears when we tried to answer the question, why do you do the things that you do? Folks, I think that is one of the most powerful questions you can not just ask, but answer. If you can answer the question why, it changes everything. It changes getting up in the morning. It changes your motivation. It changes why you do the things that you do on a daily basis when you understand the destination. And folks, here's where I started this jokingly saying, I'm here to repent. I'm here to to fall to my knees and say, I've been a bit of a hypocrite. Okay. Again, I can justify this all day long. And I can say, you know what, this is all about fun and it's all about experiment and I enjoy it. And then the other justification is I'm now an empty nester, right? I started to say that my wife and I have been married, by the way, just over 30 years. So we've been married as long as I've been doing appraisals. Um, as of September of 2025, we became empty nesters, and it's just the two of us. And yes, that means there's more time to do the things that I might want to do personally, right? I'm trying to spend more time with my wife and my spouse and build that relationship. Again, we were married very, very young. We had very little time to get to know each other really intimately before we started having children. And now we get to relive that time. And that's awesome. It's wonderful. But I do justify, going to my office in the evening or on the weekends a little bit or whatever, fill in the blank. The things that I'm teaching appraisers not to do, right? Lock the door at 5 o'clock and go to your family and don't go back, right? Lock the door at 3 o'clock on Friday and don't go back until Monday morning, right? That work will still be there when you get back. I find myself more and more justifying myself in front of this computer because, well, it's not work, it's AI, right? I'm utilizing AI to help me to work faster, to help me to work better, to help me to work more efficiently. I had one of my mastermind students send me a meme, and if you're on YouTube, I'll show you this. Now, if you're not on YouTube, sorry, you're going to miss it. I'll just have to describe it. But this was a meme that he sent me recently, and I had to immediately laugh because this. Now, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but this is a bit like what I feel like right now. So the meme is basically it shows 4 faces, kind of in totem pole starting at the top and going down to the bottom, but it's mostly focused on the eyes, right? And it says, basically this is your face on alcohol, this is your face on weed, this is your face on cocaine, right? And the eyes get more and more bloodshot as you go down. Okay, cocaine being quite red, and then on the bottom, these are your eyes on Claude slash ChatGPT updates. Okay, and the dark circles around the guy's eyes and the red bloodshot eyes. Anyway, I think you get the point. I find myself more and more often up at night, getting up very early. This morning I was up at 4:30 in the morning. Folks, I don't wake up at 4:30 in the morning for anything. But I was up this morning, and guess what I was doing? I was on AI. I was learning, I was growing. All morning I've been building with AI. I've been building systems and tools for appraisers. This morning I took one of my old revision tools, right? So a revision comes in from your client, you're able to upload the revision and the report to AI, and it will actually make sure that the revision is accurate. If it's not, it'll write a narrative explaining why the revision is wrong, very professionally, not pointing fingers, or it will tell you what you need to fix and then write that response. It's a great tool. And I was rewriting my 133 point reviewer, quality control reviewer, so that it can be transferred from a Gemini gem that I've been using it in. And by the way, before that, it was ChatGPT, a personalized GPT, and now plugging that into Claude specifically, but OpenClaw in an MD file for Project Prometheus. And that's what I've been working on all morning. And folks, it can be frustrating. And if I had hair, I'd probably be pulling it out, but it can also be very rewarding as you start to realize what these agentic systems can do. But as a consequence, I find myself less and less outside. By the way, it's beautiful. I'm looking out my big picture window right here. That's why I get a little bit of a shine on this side of my face. This beautiful picture window with trees and green grass, and it's gorgeous out there. And guess what, folks? I have not stepped foot outside yet. Here it is, almost noon, and I have been sitting in this chair since almost 4:30 this morning. And folks, I have to admit, I'm a bit of a hypocrite. And I want to share with you something that I did over the weekend that I think will be inspirational to all of us. But first, I want to pause and remind you of a couple of great companies. Speaking of working less, right, and making more money, what about the technology rule that I talked about earlier? The law of technology is this: if you can find a technology that allows you to do things better, more efficient, then why not? Right? And by the way, when I say more efficient, I mean more efficient than you doing it alone. True Tracks, folks, is that law on steroids. It is a software program that'll allow you to be able to help support your adjustments. And who doesn't want that? Everybody wants that, right? Check it out. You can find out more by going to truefootage.tech/tools. Again, it's truefootage.tech/tools. And folks, if you use the coupon code that I've given you so many times here, okay, AppraiserCoach, capital A, capital C, no space, you can get this for 6 weeks free. That's right, 6 full weeks for free. Check it out. Again, it's truefootage.tech/tools, truefootage.tech/tools. Working RE is the go-to place to find out what's going on in your world. And by the way, they've been very focused on AI because it is changing everything. It's changing the world. It's changing appraisers and how we work. And Working RE is right on top of it, just like they are on top of absolutely everything. The 3.6, everything going on in our world, Working RE is doing that. You can find out more by going to their website at workingre.com. Again, it's Working RE is in working real estate. Easy to remember, workingre.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. I have spilled my guts. I hopefully have repented of my sins. And I want to share with you something that I did over the weekend that was just beautiful. And I want to do it again this weekend. I want to do it more frequently because I need to be less of a hypocrite and more of a listener to my own advice. I find myself often coaching appraisers who are, bragging about no, I say bragging, sharing their numbers, how much they're doing lately, the volume that they're doing. And then I ask them, I say, hold on, John, how many hours per week did you spend doing appraisals? And they pause and they gulp a little bit. Oh, I don't know, maybe 60 hours. John, what have I taught you? Right. And then if they were to turn around and point fingers back and say, okay, Dustin, how many hours did you spend on AI this week? Right. I would have to gulp and take a dose of my own medicine and admit, my friends, that I'm a bit of a hypocrite here. Okay. So over the weekend, I decided on Friday, by the way, it was starting Friday afternoon, I was going to do absolutely no agentic AI building over the weekend. Now, folks, I want you to understand where I'm at with this. At the weekend that I did this, I was about 45 days into the 90-day Prometheus project. Okay. That is the absolute critical time when I need to figure this out or get out of the kitchen. Okay. I either need to cook the steak or get out of the kitchen, turn off the stove and walk away. This is a critical moment. And I have so many tools that need to be built out and need to be refined and need to be tweaked. And the idea of not doing that over the weekend was a little bit, okay, a lot bit scary. But I found myself asking myself the question, why? Dustin, why are you doing this? Why are you doing what you're doing? And if it's not to have a better life, if it's not to enjoy yourself, you're doing it wrong. And so starting on Friday, this last Friday, I decided not no AI because I use AI for everything, right? So when I say use AI, I'm often in Claude talking in conversation mode. By the way, the conversation mode in Claude is so much better than anything else. It's better than Grok. It's better than Gemini. It's better than ChatGPT. It flows and it is so appealing, satisfying to use. Just check it out if you're not already on the paid version. But I'm constantly asking things about how to fix this or what this means or, get me up to date on this, that, and the other. So it wasn't a AI weekend. That to me is not work. That's just being productive. What is work? What feels oppressive and work is getting into these tools and building. So I made myself a commitment this last weekend. I was not going to build anything in AI. And it started on Friday and ended on Monday morning. And yes, I got up early Monday morning and I started working away. But folks, I cannot tell you how amazing it was to get back to why I do what I do, to spend time outside. I went hiking. My wife and I played pickleball. I had my beautiful, wonderful, lovable little grandson over. He's 18 months now. And he played at our house for a couple of hours. I cooked a dinner for everybody on Sunday, which I do, by the way, most Sundays. That's just kind of my thing. But I worked in the garage. I worked on my Highlander, put a new latch on the back of my Highlander that had worn out. I put a fire extinguisher on my diesel truck just in case, right? I just did a few things here and there. Did some lawn work. Went on several walks with my wife outside. Um, Again, nothing groundbreaking, but it was fabulous. I got some vitamin D. I got renewed. I felt like I got back to my roots and I was ready to start back up on Monday morning. And folks, I just want to encourage all of us, especially I'm talking frequently as we do this Project Prometheus, I'm talking frequently to appraisers who are also in OpenClaw. They're also in Claude Code. They're also in Manus and building things out agentically. And they're frustrated and they come to me with questions and they come to me when they get stuck and we work through them together. And I have to step back sometimes and say, Dustin, you need to be a better example of why we do the things that we do. Agentic AI, folks, is amazing. It takes work, but the results are absolutely incredible. That being said, it is no excuse to forget why it is that we do the things that we do. By the way, I mentioned the Elevate retreat. Uh, we did that in 2025 in California. Folks, this year it's going to be even better. We are opening it up for 10 seats only. 10 people, 10 appraisers meeting together in Sedona, Arizona on November 9th, 10th, and 11th. We're already filling up those seats. We're already over halfway full. We've got a few seats left. If you are interested in spending 3 beautiful days in one of the most gorgeous places in this country, and by the way, we'll be at the #1 rated Airbnb resort in Sedona. Okay. So already we're at an awesome place. Add to that being at the very best resort there. And it is going to be an absolutely, I cannot oversell this, mind-blowing, life-changing experience. Folks, trust me on this. You have never seen anything. This is not a conference. This is not a class. This is a retreat. And it is rejuvenating. It is inspiring. It will change everything about you. Hope that you will join us. You can find out more by going to my website, TheAppraiserCoach.com. It's right there on the main page. And like I said, a couple of seats left. Would love to have you there. Thank you for joining me today, folks, and go create some value.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit TheAppraiserCoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.